Dr. Mack here. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Off the Plantation, the journey towards freedom. Today, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the House Negro syndrome. Now, first of all, I want you guys to understand that these are syndromes, these are pathologies, these do not apply at all in any way to ethnicity, skin color, or any kind of pejorative. It has nothing to do with that. These are characterizations that Malcolm X came up with when he studied life on the antebellum South, life on the plantation. He said, "Look, the interpersonal communications, the interpersonal interactions between people on the plantation were basically made up of overlords, which would be the plantation owner, the house Negro, which did all of the bidding for the plantation owner, and the field Negro, which was the one that just always wanted to find a way to escape. Get me up out of here. I need to be free." So that was basically the characterizations of life on the plantation. He learned these things from looking at the lives of Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, Henry Box, other people who were born into slavery and then escaped. So he took a look at that and he popularized these terms: Overlord, House Negro, Field Negro. And then he said they spilled over into all of America, into basically how we interact. Um, it's my assertion that they spilled over into and overlaid not only into all of America, but to American politics in particular. The reason why is because if you understand these distinctions, you see that we have all of this in play right now. We're in the middle of a political season, a political year, and you can see the cast of characters with these three characterizations coming up. It's clear, it's manifest. So let me get to it. So this particular segment is helping us to understand and underscore the life and the sort of psyche, the mindset of the House Negro. The House Negro is really an important part of this because the majority of people in America actually, in my opinion, would seem to fall under that characterization. Now, I don't mean that in a negative way at all. I just mean that just seems like if you understand what it is, you'll see that there's something there that really does resonate with most Americans. So here's the deal. Malcolm X said, "Look, you had your people that were on the plantation, that were the overlords of the plantation, the manager of the plantation, and they had maybe one or two kids, right? It was them and a wife, and then you had all these slaves out there doing the work. So what they had to do is actually look for those that would be susceptible to coming in and living with the family. You know, uh, those who would be on the take a little bit, and so they would choose which slaves they felt that they could trust, that they can bring into their sort of inner, sanctum within the plantation, and actually incentivize them to do work. It wouldn't be necessarily housework. It would be working, keeping their eyes and ears open on those that are doing the field work. You see, the thought is that all these people were enslaved, and beyond their some of the enslavement was so torturous that the thought is that everybody would want to leave the plantation. So they needed, because there's only a family and they don't have eyes or ears, they don't even understand language, they don't understand how these people communicate. They needed others within the ranks to go into the field and keep an eye on who's thinking about making a break, who's thinking about leaving the plantation. So they would invite the house Negroes in. They'd give them, allow them to stay in the main house, in the attic or the basement. The point is that they'd be closely associated with the family. They would also get the first choice hand-me-downs from the family. So the mother of the house would give the house Negro women the clothes, and of course the male, the father of the house would give the males his choice hand-me-downs as well. They would also closely situated with the family when this family ate at the table. Sometimes they'd eat at the table, but most times they'd be closely situated in the kitchen while the family ate. So they get the choice scraps off the table as well. So they get first dibs on, you know, scraps coming from the master. So Additional incentives would be that their living quarters was quite a bit different than having to sleep in the open field. Um, so they actually had a bed or a cot of some sort, and it was comfortable. It was inside the house. So they were incentivized. They were compensated. They were recompensed for their allegiance to the overlord. So so much so that when the overlord practiced, if you had an overlord that was a preacher and he practiced his sermons, they would say, "Yeah, master, that's a good sermon. Yeah, you can preach that." While they knew that the overlord was beating the slop out of other slaves out in the field, um, they would be able to watch the overlord as the overlord wanted to reprimand other slaves. They would actually applaud. Yeah, he deserved that whipping. Oh, she deserved that raping, Mister Master. Even to the point where they would, if the overlord had a problem with their wife or their girlfriend, and the overlord needed to teach her a lesson, that house Negro would hear the rape or the assault or the whatever reprimand form of reprimand would be going on, and afterwards he would justify within himself, man, I'm so sorry that she did that, Mister Master. But you had to teach her a lesson, huh? This is the mindset of the house Negro. Everything the overlord demands, everything the overlord wants, every scheme the overlord desires, everything is done for the overlord. Even to the extent that that the house Negroes would subvert their own faith foundations, their own principles and morals, and in support of manifest evils that they would see and recognize, and but they'd subvert their own thinking. So additionally, so it was a sort of a Stockholm syndrome that was associated with the house Negro syndrome. Okay, so and what if you don't know what a Stockholm syndrome is? It's that you have been so manipulated and abused mentally by your captor, your abuser, that you come to associate, that as just part of it being acceptable. So you would actually rather be with that abuser than actually live free in this case, right? So the other thing that they would do is that you had this sort of banding effect, a bandwagon. So the house Negroes within the house would create an environment where we're all together, even with the field Negroes, we're all together. Let's band together and help this overlord, this plantation owner, to have the best field, the best plantation. Now, mind you, all of them were slaves, but they did the bidding of the plantation owner based on Stockholm syndrome, the bandwagon effect, and other things. Um, and that would sort of inculcate their fervent desire to please the master. The field Negro could never be appeased in such a way. We'll have another show on the psyche of the field Negro later. What's important for you to understand about the house Negro is how it manifests today. Today, we see people really panicking about this election, especially the globalist overlords, who know that depending on who gets in the White House, they're not going to allow them to continue to go towards a great reset, for instance, or to enslave nations around the world to sort of a communist order or Marxist order. So it's very, very important that they get people in the U.S. White House that can be puppets, that can be the house Negro for them instead, in their stead here in the United States. An individual that's running, that would be, of course, Trump, is not that type. He is the field Negro type. He just wants to be free. He wants America to be free, and that's his thing. His counterpart, of course, Kamala, she's very much a puppet. She's a globalist. She's a Marxist. She comes from a communist. I'm not saying anything disparaging. This is all manifest. It's public knowledge. So she comes from a communist background. Her parents were notable communists. Her father said he's a communist. Mother was a communist professor. So she's very much inclined towards the globalist order. We saw it slipping as well with the Biden administration generally, going towards this globalist idea. So what happens now is the House Negroes in the media are asserting, demanding that all those who would go to certain Trump functions are Nazis. Trump is Hitler. Even after several attempts on his life, they still ratchet up the fervency. They still use intimidation, fear, aggressive tactics to make sure that to keep everybody on the plantation. We can't have anybody voting for this guy because if he gets in office, the global order is now disrupted for who knows how long. So this is how you begin to see and discern these actual archetypes now manifesting amongst us within America. So the whole point of this is we should not be dismayed when we hear this hysterical pablum about Hitler and Nazis and fascists and everybody there is a Nazi now, and anybody that supports Trump is a Nazi, because they must do this because their overlords demand it. So when you hear these kinds of fear tactics, when you hear the hyperbole, when you hear the over-the-top characterizations of Americans who just want to vote independently this time, they want to do something different this time. When you hear it, just know that that's the voice of the House Negro, because they're demanded to do that by virtue of the wishes of the Overlord. The House Negro doesn't have a mind of his or her own. They must do the bidding. When we see faith leaders in the same way, demanding that we vote for Kamala just because of her skin color or because she's some kind of righteous vote, completely ignoring the child deletion, and other things that she's for up to the day of delivery, completely ignoring what she does to mutilate, underage children, just, and defile them in their thoughts about who they are and who God intended them to be. Completely ignoring the fact that the economy under her and Biden has been completely eviscerated. Ignoring the fact that we're in the middle of a nuclear Armageddon in multiple fronts. You have China, Taiwan, you have Israel, and Iran, and and of course you've always had for the past couple of years, Russia and Ukraine. All with certain amounts of nuclear armaments that can, in a minute. What they're ignoring is at the expense of the what could be, which would be peace and all of that. They're going all in to satisfy the dictates of the globalist order. So these are men and women of faith, quote unquote. So when we see them demanding that we vote for Kamala, that we vote for this new order, we have to understand that they're not thoughtful, they're not serious, they're practiced in a particular pathology, and it's the pathology that's speaking, not the Bible, not theology. It's ideology that's driving their desire and their actions and intentions. Anyway, I wanted to make sure that you understood exactly what this is, so you're not flummoxed and completely questioning, like, what is this? This is what it is. We're seeing the manifestation of the House Negro being played out in American politics today. So I hope this helps you. Again, it's in my book, Revealed: The Archetypes of American Politics, Overlords, House Negroes, Field Negroes. Which one are you? Everybody in America would fit into one of those categories. Get it? It's on Amazon. Again, Revealed: The Archetypes of American Politics. All right? And I'll look forward to seeing you next time. We'll have another session later. God bless.